So you have mentioned that you love many things about cooking and food. In your menu here, you say that you love hospitality, feeding others, the creativity, the science and chemistry of cooking, finding better ways of doing things, perfecting techniques, the endless possibilities of cooking, food, and hospitality and what they provide, the many cultures of food, trying new ingredients, even failures or opportunities to learn and correct and figure out what went wrong and why. That's such encouraging advice because you said you're 65 and you have done so many amazing things, including owning a restaurant, living in different places, hosting a Christmas tea, so many things. And you're still saying you're going to make mistakes. You're going to learn, you're going to tweak a recipe. You're going to find out if this needs a different ingredient or, one of your recipes, you say, well, it doesn't need 2 cups, it needs 3, that sort of thing. And so it's a really fun thing to be on, a fun quest to be on, to find recipes and create recipes that are just right for your family. On that note, tell me some of the tips that you've learned over the years, especially your time or money saving tips.
One thing that I sent in a comment on your blog, that's kind of how we got connected, about one day they were talking about making roux. And I remember that my grandma always made roux by browning her flour in the oven so that she didn't have to stand there and stir it over and over and over and over until it got brown.
Where is your grandma from?
Oklahoma.
Yeah, so this is
Oklahoma
a tip
City.
I have not heard.
Yeah.
I mean, it's so, because usually when people are making roux, you're talking about standing over a stove forever. That there's an easier way to do it.
Yeah, you can either brown it on a cookie sheet or you can even brown it in a cast iron pan on the stove. But all you're trying to do is to get that flour the color that you want it.
So it's just plain flour. There, you don't put your oil in yet.
Or anything until
nothing in
at the end. And then it goes together very nicely. You might want to let it come to a boil or bubble up a little bit. But then you can just put it in a jar. You can make a lot, put it in a jar, put it in your refrigerator or freezer, and it keeps forever. And then you can just scoop out how much you need. I think a thing to know about flour is the browner it gets, the more it takes to thicken, like what white flour would thicken. So if you get a really nutty brown flour, it's going to take about 1 1/3 times. Instead of 3 teaspoons, it would be 4 teaspoons to do the same amount of thickening. But yeah, you can just put it away, and then you'll always have it, and you don't have to continually go back to make a roux every time you want to do something. And when I talked about cooking your prime rib, if you cook it in the house in an oven, if you don't smoke it, all of the fat that accumulates in the bottom of a pan, which will be a lot from a prime rib, you can just scrape that up, put it in a jar, and you can use that to make your roux if you're doing beef-based things, and it adds incredibly to the flavor of your roux. So you can use everything from your prime rib. Don't throw that part away. It's also really great for roasting potatoes. So that's how to do a roux.
Do you pull that flour out or to thicken gravies, sauces, soups, and gumbos? Is that what you use it for?
Yeah, you can use it to thicken anything that's appropriate. I'm trying to think. I wouldn't use it in a pudding.
Right.
I wouldn't use it in pudding. But anything that you want to thicken that's savory, you can just...
It applies.
It applies to, yeah. Yeah, and because it's mixed with fat, it will blend in nicely as it slowly melts. As the temperature of whatever you're putting in comes to a boil, it just smoothly melts into that, and you don't have to go through the whole, put it in a pan, cook it with flour, that kind of stuff.
So the pre-browning really does cut the time down. How much would you say it would cut it down?
Well, it's going to take time for the flour to brown in the oven, but you don't have to be standing at the stove stirring it. That's where, to me, the time savings comes in. You can be doing other things.
And if you have an exact method or time and like a timer going, you are not going to burn it. It's like if you've done, you kind of know what you're doing.
And I think
which you can do with the roux on the stove if you're not careful.
Yes. I think there are variabilities, like what temperature do you want to do it at? You can do it at a hotter temperature, but it goes faster and you have a bigger risk of burning it. Or you can do it at a lower temperature for a longer time. But also, how thick is the flour? on the cookie sheet. If it's really thick, it's going to take longer. If it's really thin, it's going to brown quickly.
Do you stir it?
You can, yes, I stir. Yeah, you can stir during it to get it evenly thinned. If you have an oven that you feel like is hotter on the bottom than on the top, then you need to pay attention that the bottom of the flour isn't burning before you can see the browning on the top. And also, if you live in a place that's high humidity and your flour has more moisture in it, it's going to take longer for it to brown because that moisture has to come out of it. So, yeah. So it's something that you'll need to learn for where you live, the kind of flour you buy, how much you're doing, that kind of stuff. But it's just a really easy process to brown your flour in your oven. You can do it on the stovetop in a cast iron skillet, but you have to pay a lot more attention.
I'm going to have to try this.
Yeah.
And it's a pretty inexpensive way to experiment because flour is not that expensive.
No,
So
it's not.
If you ruin it, it's okay. Just try again.
Yeah, try again. But I can't imagine how you would ruin it. I think only thing is if you cook your flour too long. There is a fine line between like nutty brown and starting to go to cocoa colored. That then it will taste burnt. You want to definitely keep it on
the nutty brown side.
the nutty brown side, not on the cocoa brown side. Yeah.
Yep.
So.
And that can happen pretty quick.
Well, yes, like everything. It seemed fine 5 minutes ago. What's the problem? But yeah.
Very true.
We it's also talked about making a cream pie filling or pudding in the microwave. Something else, though, I like to do is use a kitchen scale to scale up recipes so that for the tea, it's when I learned this, I want to make 4 kinds of scones. The recipes are basically the same, but the things I'm putting in them are different, like maybe chocolate chips or maybe currants or maybe cinnamon chips, whatever I'm putting in them. So I make it with a scale, and I use the weights of flour and on all the ingredients instead of measuring by cups. So you put your bowl on your scale and zero it out. Add all of your ingredients according to the weight. Like if 4 cups of flour weighs, I'm going to say 550 grams. I don't think that's right, but that's what I'm going to say. You put it all in your bowl, mix it up. Then you have 4 smaller bowls that once you take the weight of what all of your ingredients weighed in your big bowl, then you divide it by 4. Then you put that much ingredient in your 4 smaller mixing bowls, and you have 4 recipes of scones made. And then you just add your ingredients, like whatever you're going to add, the chocolate chips, whatever, set it aside, and then do the same thing with the wet ingredients. Weigh all of your ingredients as you make it in a bowl that has been tared. You have to always remember to do that. So then if you end up with 200 grams of wet ingredients and you put 50 grams in each bowl, then finish mixing them up and put them, do whatever you're going to do with them. Bake them or put them in the freezer, whatever you're going to do.
But it allows you to make large quantities quickly.
It allows you to make large quantities quickly, yes. And you can do it with, when I'm doing cakes, a lot of cakes, I'll do it that way. And then I also put my cake pan on and weigh 270 grams of batter in every pan. Then every cake rises exactly the same, and I don't have skinny layers and fat layers. I said earlier that a thermometer is your best friend. Really, so is a kitchen scale. If you learn how to use a scale well, it just makes things so much smoother that you're trying to do. And also, you continually get consistent results.
Do you have a favorite one, or just any that works?
Any that works, yeah. You can get ones that have lots of functions on them, and I don't use those.
No,
I just use it for weight.
Simple.
I just use it for weight, and you can select, ounces, grams, pounds, that kind of stuff.
Yes.
And yeah.
And like you say, as soon as you put your bowl on there, zero it out, or the button says tear, and it just zeroes it out so it doesn't take in the weight of your bowl, just the ingredients. And it is so easy. I have used it to make cake layers the same as well. And I really like that because you're right. If you are eyeballing it, well, somehow it ends up coming out of the oven and one is a half-inch taller than another one. And it's like, wait, what?
What happened? What happened? You can also sometimes, like, I want to put 3 ounces of something in little cups, chocolate pudding, let's say. You can set something flat on the scale where you can still see the number, and like 6 or 7 little jars on there. And then you just pour 3 ounces. And then next it will be 6 ounces, 9 ounces, 12 ounces. And it allows you to quickly fill whatever you're filling, jam jars, whatever, with the same amount of jam. And you don't have to eyeball it, wonder, look, all that kind of stuff. It just makes it go faster. Yeah.
Hey, you also make your own spice mixtures.
'Cause
Speaking of her making her own spice mixtures, she brought me one called the Salt of the Season, and it looks amazing. It looks like it's out of a specialty food shop, honestly.
One reason I like making my own spices is I can control the flavor of them. Like if I want to make something spicy or not spicy, and you don't really know when you're buying something at the store how it's going to be. There are recipes online for every kind of spice that you can make of. I just made Baharat the other night, which is a Middle Eastern spice to put on some chicken. And I didn't have to go buy the bottle of Baharat and then have it sitting in my cabinet, on my spice cabinet, taking up room until I used it again. So when you make your own spice mixtures, you go through your spices faster, so they stay fresher, and you just don't have all the bottles of all the different kinds of things going on in your kitchen, in your cabinet, or however you keep your spices. So consider making your own spice mixtures if you have a good complement of spices at your house.
So you have a recipe here for taco seasoning. How do you come up with other recipes for, say, Greek seasoning or Italian seasoning or Cajun seasoning? Do you just Google it, or do you
Sometimes
have
I
a book?
Google it. What I like to do is Google like 4 and see how they're similar and see how they're different, and then say, oh, yeah, I never thought of caraway seeds in whatever. I don't think I'm going to put that in.
Mm-hmm.
Where you might go buy something that had caraway seeds in it that
And you don't like
you don't like
caraway.
it, or you don't whatever. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And there's pretty good and easy places out there. I think, I would say probably Google has super upped my cooking game, because you don't have to buy a cookbook. You don't have to buy the spice. You don't have to buy the whatever. You can just do the research and then produce whatever you want to produce. And it makes cooking so much easier.
Well, and this is a fun gift as well if you make something a little bit unique. I mean, if you were just making an Italian seasoning, that could still be a gift. But, if you were taking a hostess gift or a little Christmas present to someone, this salt that she made, it has sea salt, dill, garlic, oregano, sage, thyme, lemon peel, orange peel, black pepper, and some sugar. This would be a really fun holiday.
Yeah.
Something that I don't think I could go and buy this in the store.
You probably couldn't. And the reason for me, it's the salt of the season. It has sage in it. So that's kind of a fall flavor. And I would do something different in January or do something different in the summer.
Well, and the lemon and orange remind me of Christmas time as well.
Yes.
So that's a really fun idea to make some specialty spices, as well as, like you're saying, just the regular ones, so you're not having to buy a mixture. You also mentioned that you have a set of measuring spoons that are different than just your half teaspoon or quarter teaspoon or eighth. What special measuring spoons do you have?
Well, they just go to the smaller sizes, below a quarter of a teaspoon. And sometimes when you find a spice recipe, it's going to say it makes like a quarter of a cup. And you don't need a quarter of a cup. You just need a tablespoon. So you can use the smaller. I don't think that there is a clear definition for a drop, a smidgen, a pinch, a dash, or a tad. But as you see them going
Those
down.
are so confusing.
Yes, you could see that, okay, this recipe calls for 1/8 of a teaspoon of cayenne pepper. And I want to quarter this recipe. What would be a quarter of 1/8 of a teaspoon? And then you can look at your little spoons and say, oh, this to me looks like it's a quarter of the size.
The dash versus the tad.
Yeah, the dash versus the tad. When you're getting down to those micro spices, micro levels, it really is not going to make that much difference. Right. But it does help you say, I don't want this to be too spicy.
Of the ratio.
Yeah, I don't want this to be too spicy. You can also get scales that go that weigh way down there, very, very small.
Just a tiny, tiny little amount.
Yeah,
of
and you could use a scale, but I've never used a scale to make spice mixtures
well, like
before.
you say, a mixture really is kind of to taste, and so there's not really a set.
Right.
This is correct or incorrect.
Right. So making your own spices is a great way. They taste so much better too. They're not
really
old. They're not dried out. They're not.
Well, how often is the recommendation to replace spices? Isn't it once a year?
Yeah.
And I don't, but I could see how if you
Yeah.
wanted it to be really fresh.
Yeah,
If
you
it
need to
sits
do
in your
that.
pantry for longer than that, I could see how the taste isn't
Yes.
quite as strong as it used to be. You also
Yes.
make your own salad dressings, which are superior in flavor, and they don't have preservatives or additives and are super easy. You have a couple of recipes here. You have the simple Russian salad dressing and blue cheese dressing, blue cheese vinaigrette. All of that, is that pretty easy to mix up? Do you do that every week?
Whenever we have salad, I do, and we have salad a lot. We probably tend to eat a lot of blue cheese at our house because I'm not necessarily making chef salads or whatever. But again, the same thing applies just like the spices. Your ingredients are fresher. You can control them. And then you don't have bottles of salad dressing in your refrigerator aging out, going past the expiration date. And my favorite way to make salad dressing is, again, a wide mouth mason jar. Put all the ingredients in and just let's it with
Shake
an
it.
or with an immersion blender. Like if you have
Oh.
like onion or garlic or whatever in it, it thickens it and it purees out all of the ingredients. And then you already have it in your jar. You can pour it on your salad. There are spice mixture recipes. There are hundreds of salad dressing recipes online. You could find whatever you were looking
Whatever
for.
you're looking for,
Yeah.
a zillion different combinations.
A
of
zillion different
ingredients.
comments. The other one I really like is to make my own ranch dressing, but with avocado in it.
I do love avocado ranch dressing. I must
Yeah,
say.
it's just really good. It's
so good.
It is so far superior than anything that you can buy because there's none of the preservatives
They give it that odd flavor.
that odd flavor, yeah. Especially with avocado, it seems there's something about avocado and those kinds of things that
No, to
doesn't.
try to keep it
Yeah.
shelf stable, or even if it's in the refrigerator at your grocery store, to keep
Yeah.
it for very long at
Yeah.
all. They
Yeah.
have to do
You
something.
do something to
that's-
it, yeah.
Yeah,
So-
doesn't taste very good.
Just make your own.
Another tip you have in here is hard boiling eggs. And this is funny because a sister and I were just talking about this. Like, how do you have how do you not deal with eggs that are peeling and chunks of white egg are coming off, chunks of the egg white?
Yeah.
So you have one of two methods that you say take about the same time, but both result in eggs that peel easily and perfectly. I use an Alton Brown method from years ago. He had a show where he tested every method imaginable, and then decided on the right one. And so that's the one I did. But it was before Instant Pots, and you have an Instant Pot method. So tell me a little bit about your two methods that you say result in perfectly peeled eggs, because with the holidays coming up, a lot of people do make deviled eggs. And it's so frustrating when you are trying to peel an egg and chunks are coming off, and no matter what you've done or tried, it's not working.
Yes. Well, my two methods are in the Instant Pot, which is 5 minutes. I know the high altitude recipe, 5 minutes. So you just have a rack in your oven and your Instant Pot, put your eggs in. With the Instant Pot, you can put in really as many as you feel like you can safely keep in there. And then you pour water to the bottom of your trivet or your steamer basket, whatever you've put in there. And then you just turn it on high for 5 minutes.
Now, would it be different if it's not high altitude? Would we need to look that up?
No, that's why I said this is not the high altitude.
not.
I know the high altitude when I wasn't for sure what the time was.
Okay.
So for 5 minutes, then this is where you have to be on it to make this method work for you. As soon as the time is up, set a timer for 5 more minutes. Then when that is done, release any remaining pressure and remove the eggs into a bowl of cold water. You really need to stop them cooking because they're so hot in the Instant Pot. If you don't think you can do that, this is probably not the method for you. But so you got to do the 5 minutes in the Instant Pot, the 5 minute rest, and then get them in ice water. The other method I learned from my son-in-law before he was my son-in-law, from a restaurant that he worked at, but that they steamed their hard-boiled eggs. Same thing. I can see why it's very similar to the Instant Pot because steam is hotter than boiling water. And so while it's not under pressure, I can see why this method also works. Put your trivet in a pan, put water under it so that it doesn't touch the eggs. Bring it to a boil, put a tight lid on, steam them for 18 minutes. Take them out and put them immediately in water to cool them down to stop the cooking, and then let them cool off and you peel them, and it's like a miracle.
I have haven't heard of cooking eggs for 18 minutes, but I guess it's because it is a very, very low. It says place the pan on a burner over medium-high heat, maintaining a simmer, steam the eggs. So it's just a really, really low heat for 18 minutes.
Yeah, and steaming, I think, doesn't have as much contact with the egg.
Mm-hmm.
It's not as much pressure, even though it's hotter.
Mm-hmm.
So you just do them for 18 minutes and
I guess here it's important because if it trivets at the bottom, it also raises it a little bit higher.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That's so interesting. That method is a little bit similar to the Alton Brown method that I use, because here you're pouring boiling water into the pan. Before that, I had done cold water, and my twin sister was saying the same thing, that she was starting with cold water. My method's you boil the water, get it to a simmer, and you lower the eggs into it. But yours sounds a little easier.
Well, how do you find that works for you?
It works great.
Really? Because what I feel like when I've tried like that method in the past, I feel like the shock of the cold egg and the hot water cracks the shell.
Really?
And then, you get those little things. So I can see usually the method is put your eggs in cold water, bring it to a boil. That's how I think most people make boiled eggs. And I think that as the egg cooks, because the temperature is not hot enough in the beginning, I think it cooks to the inside of the shell. That membrane sticks to the inside of the shell. There's something about these two methods where the egg is free from the membrane.
Water.
Well, yeah, the egg is free from the membrane. You're not ever dealing with that membrane. That's the only difference I know about it. And I'm sure that membrane has a name, but I'm sorry, I don't know it.
Yeah. I'm going to try both of these and see which one I like the most. It's probably better than mine.
If you're doing like 2 or 3 eggs, I think the Instant Pot is like overkill. Having to drag it out, put it away, all that kind of stuff. But the steamed hard-boiled eggs is really easy.
Yes.
Yeah.
Another sister said she had an egg cooker or an egg steamer. Have you ever heard of those before, where you just like plug it in and it does it all for you?
Yeah,
we
that also
were laughing
works.
about how that was cheating. I don't even know.
It is kind of cheating, but if I'm making 1 egg for myself at home or 2 eggs to make egg salad.
Yeah, if you do it all the time, it might be worth getting it. They're electric. You just plug them in.
Yeah, you just plug them in and pour it comes with a water measurer, and you put in the right amount of water for what you're trying to achieve, like a soft-boiled egg or a hard-boiled egg. Yeah. And then you walk off and leave it and come back and they're done.
They're perfect every time.
Yeah, they're perfect every time. I think the problem with that is they only hold like 5 eggs or 6 eggs. So if you want to make 2 or 3 dozen eggs, you got to keep doing it over and over again, right?
That's true. Yeah, if you're doing a big crowd, you'd probably want to do something more about what you're talking about. Let's take a quick break. Are you searching for hands-on activities to help your kids explore the practical side of science? Look no further than your kitchen. Inquisicook blends food science and culinary arts into an engaging program that puts delicious food on the family table. Let Inquisicook do the teaching with lesson videos, reliable recipes, and assessment tools that put students on track for success. Their online platform is easy to navigate and optimized for mobile, so the learning experience can move from the classroom to the kitchen without a hitch. Inquisicook turns curious students into intuitive cooks, not just recipe followers. Say goodbye to the tyranny of the ingredients list and say hello to utilizing what's in season, what's on sale, or what's in the fridge. Visit Inquisicook.com to view sample lessons, then check out the recipe gallery to see just how crave-worthy science can be. So what is your approach when you have people coming into your home, or if you're putting on a tea? What is your approach to hospitality?
I really try to focus on who my guests are going to be. If I know something about them, which like my family or my friends, I do. Maybe if someone was coming for a tea, I don't. But who are they and what makes them happy? A favorite food, a favorite drink, a favorite kind of wine. So I try to always include that so that they know that I thought about them or that we thought about them and we knew they were coming to our house. And even before they got there, we were thinking about who they are and what they like. I am a believer in a clean house. You make sure that everything looks as nice as possible. I think people are most comfortable that way. I'm a believer in fresh flowers, candles. Try to have appetizers and drinks ready. That doesn't always go as smoothly as I think it will, but sometimes it does. Depending on who it is, I might, like a friend might say, hey, can I bring something over? And I might say, yeah. And I try to make it as something as easy as possible on them, not something that's complicated. Because I want
the prime rib with au jus.
Yes, could you bring that, please? So I want people to feel that their request is respected, but I also am having someone over because I want to honor them. So depends on what the situation is. There are all kinds of situations. I try to make sure that there are options for everyone. I think having people over for dinner has gotten really complicated, and it's really, I sometimes think, how do we get to this place? Because 25 years ago, it was not like this.
Right.
And now then, sugar-free, gluten-free. I've become gluten-free. I'm gluten intolerant, so therefore I am gluten-free, something that I never ever thought would be a part of my life, but it is. So I just try to take into consideration. Sometimes if I don't know the people, I might even ask, is there something I should consider before I make my menu? So if there's someone who's vegetarian or vegan or, whatever, try to make sure that there's going to be food for them to eat. So I think the thing about hospitality is serving other people. And so whatever you can do to serve someone else is what you should be doing. It shouldn't be about you. It should be about serving other people. I think that hospitality can come in a lot of different forms. Personally, I'm an introvert, and sometimes hospitality can be really a tough thing, the small talk and the talking. And so how can you make someone feel as comfortable as possible and also be comfortable for yourself?
Yes. And for introverts, it definitely requires you kind of forcing yourself to talk.
I'm an introvert. My husband's really an introvert. So,
So you both have to nudge each other to keep the conversation going.
Make the effort. And sometimes I also like, especially if it's an occasion, like a holiday or something like that, I might try to come up with some kind of game centered on that, like a Mad Lib that everybody can fill out and then give it to somebody else to read. Something like that. It just kind of, and we also tend to have children a lot. And so children really like that. They think it's very fun, those kind of things.
Yes, everybody's kind of participating in a group activity. It kind of breaks the ice.
And I really try not to send the kids somewhere else. Sometimes they want to go somewhere else, but I try not to send the kids somewhere else because I think it sends a message to the kids that you're not the reason that we're here. You go somewhere else and we're going to do our thing. So I do try to include kids as much as possible. I think sometimes hospitality can be seeing somebody by the side of the road who needs something and going and taking care of that, get somebody a meal ticket or, and talk to them for a few minutes. So hospitality, I think, comes in a whole lot of different kinds of ways that we can serve the people around us. Volunteering to babysit someone's kids so that they can go do something that they don't ever get to do. I mean, it just looks like a lot of different things. We tend to think of
just serving others.
Serving others, so that it includes a meal, but it doesn't always have to include a meal,
For sure.
If I have long-term guests coming, like they're going to be there for multiple days, I start planning as soon as I find out that they're coming. Again, clean my house. Pay attention to their guest quarters. Like, what can you do to make their stay in whatever space they're in as nice as possible? I try to think, do they have kids? Are they grandparents? Are they whatever? I try to think about safety, make sure they have a flashlight in their room. When we lived in Kentucky, we had 3 full floors. So there were always ladders out there were ladders in the room so that if there were a fire, people could go out the windows to the ground, just that kind of stuff that you've thought of what might
happen
or what will make their stay. I don't want to say safe because that's not it, but that you've considered them, and that they're up there and that you want them to be safe. So those kind of things. I usually try to collect things from the area that we're at that are in the area that people can do, and free tickets or little flyers, or this is coming up, what's the calendar of what's going on in our town at this time, those kind of things.
Just ideas for participating in the local scene.
Whatever, yes. And then I also try to supply toiletries that they might have forgotten, like just in a cute jar that they know they can reach in there and get.
Yeah,
if
they've forgotten their toothpaste,
or
there's
something
some
like
there.
that. Yeah.
They don't have to bug you at 10 o'clock at night.
No, yes. So they don't have to do that. Yeah. And so just trying to make people feel at home, serving others, I think is what hospitality is about. Yeah. And like I said, it looks a lot of different ways.
Yeah. That's great advice.
Yeah.
So what are some of your must-have kitchen items? You have mentioned the wide mouth jars, and I agree. I really do like those a lot. What else do you have as a must-have in your kitchen?
I am kind of kitchen gadgety, but I do try to pare it down also to the things that I need. I think a second refrigerator. I don't even know how people live without a second refrigerator. But
well, when you're inviting the crowds over and doing the events that you're talking about, for sure, you do need a second refrigerator.
But I did recently acquire my third refrigerator, and so they're all in use.
You are cooking for a crowd. You can tell she loves to cook.
Yeah.
I love this.
And I think also an extra freezer.
An extra freezer is nice.
Yeah, to have an extra freezer.
You can pre-make things and have a space to put it way in advance if it freezes well.
Yes. And then my favorite probably tool is a Ben Reiner Japanese mandolin slicer, which is just a really sharp blade. Doesn't do much else. But I can slice potatoes really fast on it, carrots, onions,
just make
whatever.
Sure prep go so much faster.
Yes, my prep goes so much faster. And I don't have great knife skills. For someone who likes to cook, I just really never developed good knife skills. So it helps me a lot. I mentioned my kitchen scale, thermometers, an immersion blender. It seems like I do a lot of citrus. So I like a citrus reamer that gets all the juice out. Whatever it takes to get the juice out of a piece of citrus. So I have one that has a gear on the top so that as you squeeze it down, it doesn't slip. It just keeps going down as you ratchet through the gears. And so it just helps you have the strength to push all of the juice out. Yeah. They look, there's that one where you squeeze together, but there are some that have gears right there or look like gears that they lock as it goes down, and it really squeezes all the juice out of them.
Okay.
I also really like an electric tea kettle. Like if I go into the kitchen and I'm getting ready to cook pasta or rice, the first thing I do is fill the kettle and turn it on to get the water hot so that it doesn't have to happen
decreases your cooking time.
Right, because it takes the water so long to boil on the stove, and it takes half the time in the kettle. So I always use an electric kettle for preheating water. And then my Instant Pots. I do so much stuff in my Instant Pots that I
just
couldn't
really
live with them at altitude. Time. Also, potatoes and rice and stuff like that are really hard to cook evenly at high altitude. And so they all cook really well in the Instant Pot. And then I wanted to say my grandkids' favorite kitchen gadget is my whipped cream dispenser.
I can see why that's their favorite gadget.
Yes, that's what they like the best. And they use it. Oh, they put it on top of ice cream or whatever, but they also...
So this is you put real whipped cream in there. This is not, you don't
just
go
put
and buy
cream.
the fake stuff at the store.
Yeah, you just put cream in it.
It's not fake,
but you just put cream in it, and then the CO2 cartridge that goes in the lid aerates it somehow. I don't know. But anyway.
But it would taste so much fresher than the cans you buy at the store. It is really good.
The problem with it, you can't put sugar in it.
Okay.
So you are just whipping the cream.
But if a lot of times you're using cream on top of something that has a lot of sugar, like you mentioned that yours is used almost exclusively for breakfast tacos, which is strawberries and sugar. And, it's already sweet. And some people really don't want sugar in their whipped cream. So I kind of don't mind that.
Yeah. So we have a little salt shaker filled with sugar, and my grandkids know where it's at. So if they need it. And then I think I've already talked about kitchen thermometers. It's like magic. A kitchen thermometer is like magic. It just makes everything go so much better in your kitchen.
Yeah. You have a baked goods temperature chart that's a good reference for target temperatures depending on what you're making. And you also have, speaking of kitchen scales, we did talk about that earlier. You have a reference chart for baking equivalent volume versus weight, which is also interesting. So she has grams, ounces, cups, that sort of thing, so you can compare them all. So I'll have to post those as well with her.
Yeah, if you want to learn to cook with a kitchen scale, you need to find out what. Like a cup of sugar and a cup of flour don't weigh the same.
And British do cook with that.
Yeah.
Is that where you picked that up, or have you always done that?
I've probably always done that.
More accurate.
It's just easier. If you know a cup of flour is 4.5 ounces, you put your bowl on, you put it in, and then you know a cup of sugar is 200 grams, and you just pour it in until it gets to 340 grams. And, it just is such a much easier process. Plus, then you don't have measuring cups to wash at the end of the day.
Yeah, you've just put your ingredients straight into a bowl.
And stirred them up, yep.
That's so interesting. So do you have any stories for us?
Oh, my gosh.
Disasters of all of these years of hosting big Christmas dinners, your family, Christmas teas? I bet everything's just perfect.
I think when you cook a lot, you have a lot of potential for disasters. Probably my first real kitchen disaster was when my husband and I were dating. I made him that whip of gold cake, the recipe that I gave you, because that was his favorite cake.
Okay, this sounds like a promising start.
Yeah. And I don't know if you remember Tupperware, but they had a square.
I had Tupperware parties back in the day.
It had a square keeper that was about this big, as big as about 90, and it had a lid on it. And I don't know what it was supposed to go with, but I had used it like a cake pan or like a cake cover. I put the cake on the bottom, on the lid, and then I was going to set that over it. But when I made the cake, it didn't look like it expressed how much I loved him. So I made a second cake and put it on the top and then re-iced it. So there was a double layer cake, which was really the equivalent of 2 recipes of cake. When he was leaving with it, he was carrying it like this, and the Tupperware bent, and it just went on the carport of my parents' house and just splatted everywhere. There was icing on the car, on the bricks, everywhere. It was a huge mess.
Oh.
So that was my first kitchen disaster.
He never even got to try.
He never even got to try it. Yeah. He probably maybe did it on purpose. Maybe did it on purpose. I don't know.
It was like, oh great, she's gonna ask me, did I eat all of this?
Yeah. One of my first as an adult having people over for dinner was when I lived in Alaska. And I had one of the guys from our church who was single over for Sunday dinner, and I made eggplant parmesan. Why? I don't know. I think probably because eggplants grew in Alaska pretty well. But it was horrible. I can't even tell you why it was horrible. But we all sat down and we all took a bite and we just all looked at each other.
This is inedible. We cannot salvage this.
How are we going to get through this? But anyway, he was very kind about it, and I think we ended up going to get pizza or something like that. When we lived in Kentucky, in our historic home, it did not have a place for a second or third refrigerator or a freezer. And so I made chicken noodle soup, and there was some left over. And so we put it in a cooler with some ice and set it on the porch. But it must not have kept it cold enough. I don't know. So my son-in-laws were there, and they were installing a new dishwasher for me, my son-in-law and my future son-in-law. And they ate the chicken noodle soup for lunch. And the first one who'd eaten first in about 30 minutes said how well he did not feel. And then about 30 minutes later, the other son-in-law said, I'm not feeling so great either.
No.
They both got horrendous food poisoning.
That's
awful. It is awful. It is awful. As far as I know, the only time I've ever given anyone food poisoning. But
I know you felt so bad.
Yeah, I felt so horrible. They did tell me that they didn't heat it probably as much as they should have.
But still,
yes, it was very, 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 very sad. Then once upon a time, I left a pan on the fire, and I found out from listening to your people from America's Test Kitchen, it was probably a disc bottom pan.
Okay.
But it got so hot that the copper core melted out of the pan and was in the drip pan of the tray when we came home.
That's
interesting. It's interesting and scary. And scary that we did not. We had put it on to boil water to put humidity into the house,
and then forgot
that it was on, and we went off. But when we came home, it smelled hot in our house. It didn't smell like anything was burning, but sometimes things have a smell of hot, so it kind of smelled hot. So we started looking around like, what is that? And we went into the kitchen, and it was glowing red. there's all the copper melted out onto the.
Wow.
Yeah.
Were you able to get it off of your stove and still use your stove? Or did it
when
ruin
it cooled, it just
kind of popped off.
came
of your
out like
burner?
like a mold kind of. Yeah. It was very weird, very strange. I learned a lesson there.
Tip: don't go off and leave anything just boiling on your stove and think you're going to remember.
Right. And my two son-in-laws, the same one who was now in the family and the one who was coming into the family, just told the coming into the son-in-law getting ready to come into the family, don't ever pass up an opportunity for food because you never know when you're going to eat. And so we had been out to buy Christmas trees that day, and it was like 4:00. And the one son-in-law said, I think I'm going to stop and get a hamburger. And the other son-in-law said, like, it's just 2 hours till dinner. Right. And he said, well, maybe not. You should never pass up.
Because he knew it might take you a bit.
It might take me a bit,
pull out your full stop menu.
Yes, don't ever pass up an opportunity for food.
That's pretty great. Yeah. Maybe that's why they scarf down that chicken noodle soup so fast.
Maybe, yeah. They're very fun. I've got great son-in-laws.
That's pretty good.
Put up with a lot, that's for sure.
Well, that is just so much fun. And now you're continuing the tradition of teaching cooking, not only to us on this podcast, which I very much appreciate all of your tips and your menu ideas, but also to your grandchildren. I also love a story that you told me. It says, my grandson just called me yesterday after school. He asked me to come over and I said, what's up? He said he just needed me to come over. I thought something bad was up. It turns out he just wanted me to help him make pizza sauce from scratch so he could make after-school pizzas. Those are the kind of calls I love.
Yes.
He is very fun. That you're teaching your grandchildren.
Yes, it is very fun. And he is the one right now who's the most interested. His brothers and sisters like to help, but he's the one like, Nana, I want to make learn how to make fettuccine Alfredo, pasta from scratch and fettuccine, and macaroni and cheese and all that kind of stuff. So he's becoming a very good cook.
Yeah. And when you travel to see other granddaughters and grandsons, you're thinking about, what am I going to cook next with them? I know you said in Seattle you're going to go and teach chocolate pudding next time you visit.
Yes. So yes. And that's where I'm there now. And so we need to have a pudding lesson.
That sounds good.
So very fun.
So when you leave, they have new recipes to make.
Yes, I hope so.
Skills.
You know, I do sometimes think about where is food going, eating, because there seems to be a lot of restaurants and eating out and that kind of stuff. And that sometimes people maybe don't even think someone has to cook the food. When you're a kid, I mean, adults know that, but when you're a kid, that it just, milk comes from the store and food comes from a restaurant. Yeah, I want them to know that they have the power to.
It's kind of fun to ask young children, do you know what French fries are made out of? Because some of them really don't know potato.
Yeah.
I asked my second graders, I don't know why we were on the topic of food, but I asked my second graders, they all knew that one. And then the other one was, do you know what was it? Do you know what a pickle is? And some of them knew and some of them didn't, Anyway, so sometimes when you do things like that, it's kind of a fun trivia because young kids, it's all, you see the gears working like.
Or you ask them how they think something is made. Yeah. And the same thing. They're like, I have no idea.
I don't know. It just appears when mom puts it in front of
exactly.
me.
Exactly, without realizing all of the work that goes into it.
That's true.
Yes, our farmers are whatever the food distribution system is, however they're getting their food, where their chicken McNuggets are made or their whatever. Yeah.
That's why it's kind of fun to read some of the older books because, they went out in their yard and wrung the chicken's neck and had to clean it before dinner time. If they were going to have chicken, they didn't go and buy it in a grocery store all perfectly packaged. So we are very blessed.
Yes, we are. That's true. We don't have to work that hard for our food anymore.
We have such variety as well.
Yes.
Well, thank you so much for joining me and for taking time out of your trip to visit your sister and your other family. I really appreciate it. And this is just such a fun presentation. I cannot wait to pre-practice some of these things, especially the individual Yorkshire puddings. I better pre-practice.
I think you will. I think they'll be very good.
I will implement some of this in my Christmas menu. Maybe all of it. We'll see if my family's open to an English. What did you call it?
We'll call it a prime rib dinner. And
I'll just say, instead of an English-inspired Christmas celebration, it's a prime rib dinner. Then they'll all say, absolutely.
We're down for that. That's very good.
So anyway, thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me. It was very fun.
Until next time, bye.